He's not engaged right now. Hey, everybody. This is Val Campbell from Seattle. I think we're live. There we go. And it is a beautiful Saturday morning in Seattle where Brad and I are. And my name is Val Campbell, for those of you who just stumbled on this. And we are part of a global online social media marketing group. And basically, we teach people how to make money online. And we host this Saturday morning show where we have a lot of fun and talk about a lot of cool things and get a chance to really just relax a little bit after a crazy week. And Brad, why don't you say hi to everybody while I finish this process here?
Okay, welcome everybody. This is Brad Krantz. I'm also from Seattle, kind of a cohort of Vals, I guess. We are established online business. We got our core group here of about 8 of us that have over 100 years plus experience in the industry. So we're a knowledgeable group of people. We have an online platform that we're using that literally allows us to work in about 152 countries around the world. So awesome thing. And today, I guess I'll just start. I'm gonna talk. Well, this is what we're gonna talk about, guys. It's not typical talk about mentorship. Val's going to talk about what is mentorship, and then how do you find a mentor, and then we may find another question or two. But this isn't something that's really ever discussed. I've never heard a discussion about it. You'll find it in some books. They do talk about it, servant leadership. Roadmap that I've got, there's a small chapter on mentorship. It doesn't really go in depth, but I'm going to kind of let Val carry the reins here. But if you're interested in mentorship, learning more about it, what's it all about? Why is it important? We're going to talk about that, Val. So ready to roll on your end.
Well, as I'm just kind of finishing up this little piece here, I will share one of my experiences and how this really came to be such an important subject for me. It was relatively early in my career. I was in the management team of a United States side of an international conglomerate. And there was a problem with the company. And I was on the operations side, somebody else was on the admin side. And the admin side had a problem. And that guy got fired. And now I became the admin guy and the operation guy. And I was in my early 30s and I was a little over my head. This was a pretty good sized company. Excuse me. And I had the great fortune that one of our creditors in the company was a guy that was he owned a company. The company was a creditor, but the guy that owned the company was extremely successful business guy. He was brilliant and kind of eccentric. Like a lot of really successful, brilliant people are, right? And what happened was he called me and we were talking on the phone, and I think he kind of sensed, young guy, a little over his head. Excuse me. And he said, have you ever done any business modeling, any pro formas? And I said, no, I really haven't. This is long enough ago. I'm going to betray myself here. Spreadsheets and some of the stuff were kind of new. Okay. Sorry, folks. I mean, Brad and I, we go back, into the Stone Ages.
Dot matrix printers and all that stuff.
We usually used to actually use this. This is called a pencil. Pencil for those generations that have never seen one. Yeah. Anyway, so this guy was kind enough to bring me to his house. He says, "Why don't you come out to my house Saturday morning? We'll spend some time and I'll kind of show you a few things." And I went, "Okay, great." This guy's name's Randy Wheatbrook, and he will forever be one of my favorite, mentors, because he kept engaged with me. I didn't know anything. I went to college until I was 30 years old. I was not full-time, but while I was managing and running and owning businesses, I was always going to school. Nights, weekends, I was picking up computer classes or accounting classes or whatever it was that I needed to be able to run my business. But nowhere in my formal educational experience did anybody ever teach me the importance or how to establish a mentoring relationship. And I swear, if Randy hadn't reached out to me, which is not typically the way it works, if he hadn't reached out to me, pulled me into his home office and been willing to spend a Saturday morning laying out how to do business modeling so that you can do cash flow projections and pro formas and things like that from a guy who owned a $50 million a year company. This never would have opened my eyes, but it was amazing. And he continued to keep in touch with me over the next few years as I was working through some of my business growth processes. And every once in a while, Randy would just call me up on my phone and ring, and it'd be Randy, and Randy'd say, well, are you chasing the dog or is the dog chasing you? And, sometimes I was chasing the dog, sometimes the dog was chasing me. And that's the way it is in business, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember one time I told him, I said, Randy, I said, the dog's chasing me, but I just took a turn around a tree and I picked up a stick on the way. And one more turn, I think I'm chasing the dog. And Randy and I had a good laugh. But this was the power of a mentor, was that he gave me access to experience that I never would have had. He was 15 to 20 years older than me. He developed some huge companies, and he gave me access to his brain. So the first thing that I just want to share with everybody is the point of establishing a mentoring relationship is that you get to access the brain and experience of someone who's been where you're going to go. But how do you do that? How do you pick? I got fortunate, okay, is that the right person at the right time reached out to me. And that does happen sometimes. But more often than not, the better way to do this is to start building a relationship that in the future is going to be a mentor that will be there when you need them. So let me just...
Great points, by the way.
I didn't have my full complement of hot green tea this morning, I can tell.
Oh.
Let me just take a second. Brad, tell what experience do you have in your life about mentoring that might lend to this while I'm taking just a second?
Well, this is kind of an interesting thing. I've got a degree in business, but I do a fair amount of teaching in our church. And one of the things, my pastor, who's got a doctorate, consults me all the time. He's been very empowering, but I early on through some conferences that I attended regularly over the years was able to develop mentor relationships with some top scholars and Bible teachers. And that really helped to elevate my knowledge. And I guess, if I can use the term, step up my game. So I was really fortunate. I haven't gone to seminary. I don't have a master's. I don't have a doctorate. But by mentoring with people that did, it really elevated my game and really kind of stepped up, because I had several people that were there. I could ask questions. I could get answers. They would challenge me with stuff. They'd give me reading assignments and such. So the value of a mentor is incredible. I mean, if you can get a good mentor, people that will they want to help you. They want to help you learn, which Val's situation with one of his creditors was fortunate in the theological realm. I was really able to develop that. Not so much in the business realm. I would say the last company I worked for, sadly to say, the person that was in charge of that company, I'll say it that way, had zero mentors as far as I could tell. And that's probably why there's some challenges in that company. I never heard this person talk about having mentors or a mentor group. So I always wondered, who does this person mentor with? Because if you're it, you're going to run into that ceiling at some point. And none of us know everything. I think the smartest thing, leaders can say is, we don't know everything, but part of being a leader is understanding what your limitations are and finding people that can help you and that can elevate you. So Val, let's get into what is mentorship. Let's talk about that a bit.
Well, because we lost our connection, I want to just roll through that story again real quick, because I think there's an illustration there. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. It's one of the things that we deal with once in a while with Facebook and the webinar process going live. So early in my career, I was about 30 years old, and I ended up being kind of the last man standing in a corporate situation where there were some problems on the administrative side of the company. That was not, at the time, an area that I had a lot of expertise. I was more operational. Excuse me. And what happened was that I ended up being in charge of the United States division of a Canadian international conglomerate. and I was trying to sort through things and figure stuff out. And one of our creditors, a big company locally here in the Seattle area, was owned by a very, very successful business guy. And this guy called me one day, and he was just, we owed him a bunch of money, and he knew we were kind of going through some stuff. And he just called to just sort of check in, see how we were doing. And he and I started, his name is Randy Wheatbrook. Randy and I started talking, and he asked me, he said, what do you know about doing business modeling and pro formas on spreadsheets and things like that? And I kind of laughed. I said, well, I don't really know much, He said, well, why don't you come up to my house Saturday morning, and we'll just spend some time, and I'll show you how to do this stuff. Now, this was a situation where someone reached out to me because he had a financial interest. This is an important point. He had a financial interest in the success of our organization. And he reached out to me, which isn't typically what happens, but occasionally. He reached out to me, and we started talking. He brought me into his house on a Saturday morning and gave me access to his brain. Sorry about that. I'm still cleaning the pipes here this morning. Anyway, and so as we launch into this subject, and I'll move through it as quickly as I can and cover it, the purpose of a mentor is for you, the mentee, to get access to their brain and experience so that you don't have to suffer the learning curve of getting from where you are to where you want to be. Mm-hmm. And I went to school until I was 30 years old. I was running businesses, owning businesses, but I was always going to school, always taking classes in computers and accounting or whatever it might be. But I never had this subject come up. I was never had this in school of mentoring 101. Excuse me. So that's what I'm calling this, mentoring 101, mentorship 101.
And Val, just to comment on that, the fact that he reached out to you, to me, shows one, that smart guy, but leadership. Yes. Okay, these people owe me money. He could just be demanding it. He could be like the typical person, hey, owe me up, or, pay me or this. But he said, hey, I'm smart enough to know, let me help this guy out. He seems like he's teachable, wants to learn. If I can help him get this, then I can probably help them pay me. So that's an example of a leader and a mentor that understands how those two blend together.
Right. And if you'll forgive me for saying so, and Brad and I have talked about this, the relationship between leadership and mentoring, my experience is one of the signs of a really great leader is that person develops mentoring relationships so that yes, that person can be moving ahead of where the organization needs to be. So yes, we're going to talk about that this morning, and I'm going to turn this and orient it to our team and what Brad and I have done to prepare our team, not just for where we are today, because very often the leader on a team, they know where they are today. They maybe have the skill sets and the experience to be able to do what the team needs today. But we need to look forward, having that vision for where the organization is going to go, what you want to be in the future. If you're an individual, if you're listening to this, what do you want to be in the future? And then reach out there and start laying the path to be able to get to that point. And a key part of that is developing those mentoring relationships, always keeping those mentors out in front of you in maybe in different types of mentors. We'll talk about that. But mm-hmm, so that when your organization gets to that point, the mentor is prepared to be able to help you. So one of the key elements of mentoring isn't just the mentor, it's the mentee putting themselves in submission to be able to reach out to another person and say, hey, my name's Val. I'm going to need you in a year. Can we start developing a relationship so that, you know what we're going through now? Hey, if you see anything, comment right now, but so that you can start to see what we're doing and where we're going, because in a year, I'm going to need to have somebody that's got this group of experience, and I've picked you to see if you would help me. So I'm gonna open this up in a slideshow.
Okay.
Because that's going to keep me on track.
It kind of goes into value. Leaders, obviously they empower others, but leaders create other leaders. If you are an uplifter versus a diminisher, by uplifting people, you're trying to create more leaders. And part of the way you do that is through mentorship. Teach people what you know so that you can impart that knowledge to them so that they can in turn become leaders.
Yes, absolutely. So let me figure out how to get back where I need to be here, because I need to start this display settings, swap.
This is the class that we thought never existed.
Yeah, this goes to Jim Rohn's, another great mentor of mine, and I think Brad's. Jim Rohn said, gee, when I was in college, they never offered Success 101 and Success 102. I would have signed up for both classes.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about Mentorship 101. I think it is absolutely a key to success. I don't personally know any person who's achieved tremendous success without having a mentor. And I can just tell you, Bill Gates has a mentor. I happen to know that. Bill Gates, probably more than one of Bill Gates' mentors is Warren Buffett.
Yeah, I was going to say yes.
Now, if Bill Gates, the wealthiest guy in the world, maybe with the argument of the Amazon guy,
Jeff Bezos,
you can argue between those two. But if those guys need mentors, then what about the rest of us? No matter what we're doing in life. So let's talk about mentorship and the idea of a mentor and a mentee, and how does this get started and what's the value of it? So what is mentorship? We talked about that just a minute. These are, by the way, these are questions that Brad pushed to me as prompts. And one of these we're going to leave till later to the end. But what is mentorship? Well, mentorship is a process where two people come together in a relationship so that one person can access the experience of the other person for the purpose of not having to experience the errors and the learning curve, or to get through a learning curve faster.
Yeah.
What's that old statement? If you're going to cross a minefield, Brad, what do? You
want to follow somebody who's gone through it, or you don't want to have to do the mistakes on your own. You want to go on the backs of others that have made those mistakes so you can find out how to not make the same mistakes. Yeah, if you're the guy going through the minefield, you might make it, you might not. So if the guy's made it through, that's the guy you want to follow. He's your mentor.
Exactly. Sure. So how do you find a mentor? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Some places that you can go to find a mentor. And also, why is mentoring not more common? And that was a great question that Brad asked me. We're going to save that one to the end, okay? So the first thing about a mentorship process is you have to know what you're trying to achieve, right? How are you going to pick a mentor if you don't even know where you're going? If you don't have any idea what you're doing in life or what you want the outcome of your activity to be, how are you going to pick somebody to get there? Now, I'm going to share with you another story that I had one of my employees one day come in to my office and knocked on the door, came in, sat down. How you doing? How you doing? Yeah, it was great. It's always good to visit with people on your team. And this guy said, I've got a little bit of money, and I thought maybe I'd put it in the stock market. What stock should I buy? Now, keep in mind, at the time, I'm a construction guy. I can tell you just about anything you want to know about construction on just about any level, quite frankly. But, my experience in the stock market is I am a fantastic person to watch when it comes to the stock market. Anything I get in, you need to get out of immediately because it's going to go down, okay? And when I get out, just watch me. When I get out, you want to get in immediately because it goes up. I know nothing. Well, I know how the stock market roughly works, but that is not where I've spent the focus of my life studying. And yet, and I felt honored. I told him, I said, gosh, I'm honored that you would come ask me this, but that's not my area of expertise. Okay? You need to go find somebody who has that expertise. And we're going to talk about how to do that. So you got to know what you want and where you're going first before you can pick your mentor. So how do you find a mentor? Where do you look? Okay. First off, in the industry that you are developing in. So if you're in med school and you're going through the process, maybe you want to pick, if you want to be a heart surgeon, maybe you want to find a really good heart surgeon and say, hey, will you be my mentor? Or, as I'm going through school, as I'm going through this process, guide me through here. What should I be focusing on? Or if you're in the construction industry, find somebody in the construction industry, because that person understands that discipline. Maybe somebody who's 20 years ahead of you and can help you through that process, right? How about online resources? There are actually resources, organizations that you can go to online and search for mentors in different categories, because some of your mentors might be industry specific, like construction industry, but some might be more general in nature. Some might be having to do with, years ago when I was really getting into cycling, I needed somebody to kind of help me through that, to guide me. And that's kind of hard, because when you're cycling and you're with somebody you're new, they're experienced, that, most people aren't willing to spend the time with you because they're riding a lot faster than you are. So yeah. Willingness and availability become important. But I went into places where you could get a hold of cyclists. There's cycling clubs. This is just examples, okay?
I've got one too, Val.
Go ahead.
LinkedIn, and I just say this, LinkedIn reached out to me last month to know if I wanted to be a mentor for somebody as far as leadership. I haven't responded because I'm busy, but LinkedIn could be a resource for mentors as well, because it's a business to business platform.
Absolutely.
So there's an example there.
Absolutely. And I didn't, great point, because I didn't think of that one when I was putting this outline together, but there's an organization called National Mentoring Resource. There's one called ICouldBe.org. These are places, websites where you can go and search for subject matter experts that you might be looking for. So you've got different types. And so the next line here, the next bullet point is online mentoring. This is one of the most powerful things that's available to us in the world today. Now, I just want to outline this just a little bit. When you go to school, you sit in a classroom. The person that's at the front of the class probably has a degree in education and a minor in mathematics, something like that. Okay, they were an education major with a minor in biology. They're a biology teacher. With all due respect, that person is not a subject matter expert. Follow me? And so with all due respect, again, what you're doing is you're learning from somebody who is not the greatest expert in the world at that subject matter. And so if you are advanced, if you're trying to push ahead, you need to go find somebody who is my opinion, a world-class subject matter expert. And where can you do that? LinkedIn might be a good source for that, okay? Places that I have found, YouTube. YouTube, in my opinion, is the single greatest resource for education today. There was a point in time when I wanted to learn a new skill set of using the internet to do marketing. And I spent 1 year, couple thousand hours. This is like a master's course, right? Couple thousand hours on YouTube. And talking to people and watching videos. And first off, you've got to establish who are these subject matter experts. You've got to have some way of evaluating them. So you start looking for, what's their following? What have they produced? You go look at their content and see how they're ranking and things like this. There are ways that you can do research on people to see, are they actually subject matter experts, or they are just opinionated? Right? That's a big difference in being opinionated and being an expert. The difference is results. Have they created results? So YouTube is a great one. Khan Academy, a great online institution, a university, if you will, online. Facebook. Facebook is one of the best places, quite frankly, to find mentors. And years ago, I started having people from overseas, young people, reaching out to me, creating friendships. And every once in a while, you know, Sine Najimi from Morocco, Jonathan Saleh from Uganda, Shuja from Afghanistan. I've got a couple of people in the Philippines, people that reached out to me, created a friendship. And in the case of Jonathan, from the time he was 14, almost 15 years old, he was building a relationship with me and creating this process. So if you know what you're doing, if you reach out, you have the opportunity to start to develop a relationship with somebody. And part of this is testing them as far as what are their successes, what's the fruit on their tree, right? What have they done? How do they think about things? Any questions about that so far, Brad, that you can?
Well, I think one of the other things too, I've found a number two on LinkedIn, but Facebook, like Gary Vaynerchuk, one of the top social media marketing strategists. He's also a best-selling author. So if they've published books or a book or several books and they're bestsellers, they probably know what they're talking about. You know, John Maxwell, same thing. We could say there's a number of people online, great resources, but they have books out. They've got best-selling books out on the topic. So that would be a subject matter expert that you could follow.
And you don't have to do everything your mentor says. This is not a control situation.
Right.
This is a relationship where you get access into different ways of thinking of things. You know, it's you can't see clearly because you can't see the trees clearly because you're so deep in the forest. Well, this person has perspective. They've got experience, and they're a step back away. And I would say if you pick your mentor well, you probably would be advised to learn how to ask the right questions. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But also, if your mentor says something to you, you better double, triple, quadruple check your thought process if you instantly reject that. It's okay to debate something and kind of, because this is my process. It can be frustrating for my mentors because I'm going to argue it. But my argument isn't resisting what they're saying as much as it's the way that I process something through. Because I'm testing, I'm creating this argument so that we can prove how does this work. So this, again, part of developing the relationship. But Brad, that's a great point. Now, selecting a mentor. How do you choose a mentor? There's a lot of things online that if you look at how to pick a mentor or something like that, you're going to see all kinds of stuff, all kinds of opinions. I'm going to share with everybody what my criteria is, because there's lots of criteria, bits and pieces, but I think it all fits into these. And there are some things here that I never see on any of those lists, and I don't know why. Mm-hmm. First off, have they created what you want to create? Right? And I mean this not just in terms of a specific business situation, although that might be the case. Mm-hmm. And I can think of a very public figure right now that probably would not be someone that I would mentor in certain ways, but I would love to have him mentor me in other ways. Right? There are people who are eccentric. Maybe you don't like what they've created in their personal life. I'm not going to mentor with them in those areas, but they might have some really, really amazing subject matter that they are the most expert in. I'm going to drill into that subject matter, but I'm not going to confuse myself with thinking that I'm going to get marriage advice from them, for instance, right? Yeah. This might be the world's greatest expert on developing businesses in Asia. And I might pick a person to mentor with that area, but I realize in some other area of life, they have not been as successful. I'm not going to really try and elicit their input on that. That makes sense, right, Brad? You've been there, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get down here, but I've got some
All right. So have they created what you want to create? If they haven't done it, they're not going to be my mentor. Other than that, it's just a baseless opinion. Secondly, have they helped others to create what you want? Now, this is really key because this goes to their ability to communicate well enough and to teach well enough that other people can hear what they have to say. And I can tell you in my experience, and I have been around some really, really amazing people, particularly in the industry of developing network consumer markets. Some really amazingly successful people, but their communication style and their personality were so abrasive and so counter to mine, I would not be able to hear what they had to say. So when I was doing my analysis of this past 3 years of trying to figure out the who and the where and how we were going to connect to a company and what point we were going to connect to, meaning what team, what mentor were we going to pick. This was a big decision for me. It was one of the most difficult decisions because as I got to talking to different companies and as I got to talking to the leadership, the field leadership in these companies, I kept running into these people who either didn't really understand the fundamentals of this industry. They just happened to be successful because they were charismatic or whatever. But they didn't really understand the fundamentals. Often people get in a situation in the business world where they have success because they're in the right place at the right time and they just stumble into it. Mm-hmm. But they can't duplicate it. They may have some niche that they're in and they've created a lot of success, but if they try and take that into other areas, they're not successful. Go ahead, Brad.
Hey, just kind of a follow-up on that. You say, if they helped others create what you want. Well, one of my favorite leaders, mentors in leadership is John Maxwell. He's very well known. But John Maxwell is not only a great leader and he's a great communicator, but he's created a lot of other leaders. So when you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for someone who has success and has helped others create the same thing. And I think, Val, with what you're talking about, one of the reasons, and I'll just say it, why we're working with Calvin DeSera is because not only is he's a great leader, he's a servant leader to the core, but he's helped others create a lot of success too. So it's not just him, and he doesn't have anybody else that he's actually helped. He's helped dozens of other people create success. So you're looking for somebody that has a track record of leading and helping and mentoring others to the same level of success or greater.
Absolutely. And when I put this together, I specifically used the word they instead of he or her. And the reason I did that is because in some situations, a mentor can actually be an organization. And Brad and I were part of an organization that, in my opinion, is the greatest leadership development and mentoring development system in the world. I've never seen anything equal to it. And that is a group called Worldwide Dream Builders. And they're specific to an industry, specific to a company. But we took what we learned there from a group of people that, quite frankly, had developed more than 10,000 millionaires. More than 10,000 people with an asset value of $1 million or more that they created in that group globally over a period of, 50, 60 years, Brad?
Yeah.
We took what we learned there and brought it over into some other situations. So sometimes it can be a group, it can be a company where you go in and you look and you say, wow, there's really something incredible that was created here because of a mastermind. A leader, a mentor can be a mastermind group that created something.
Yeah.
So this goes beyond, but primarily here we're talking about an individual, and within that group, Brad and I both had mentors. In my case, Dave Severin. Brad, who was a mentor? Did you have somebody that really connected with you there?
Well, Brad Duncan was probably one of the ones too. Yeah.
Brad Duncan. Now Brad's an example of a guy, quite honestly, I loved him. He is an amazing guy, but his personality is really abrasive. But part of the reason his personality is abrasive is he kept saying things that were irritating that were true. Right? Sometimes this actually is part of being a mentor. And yes, Brad was, I didn't know him personally. I met him a couple of times, but I didn't know him personally the way that I knew Dave, but you know, Brad was one of those guys. He had a few back in the day when we had tapes, where he had a couple of tapes I'd pull out when I needed first aid kit. You know, I'd throw that tape in, and man, that guy's irritating. But he was irritating because he said the truth. And sometimes that's hard to hear. Yeah. But that's part of a mentor sometimes, right? So the next thing that I have here is shared values and compatibility of personality. This is super important. And I'm going to use myself as an example of this, and I'm going to just be bare naked honest with everybody. I am a difficult person to mentor. Okay? I am really a difficult person to mentor because I've accomplished a lot of things in my life, but I haven't accomplished all the things I want to. And I need to have someone who can tell me things in a way that I'm open to hearing them. Because sometimes people come to me from a certain perspective, and they might say things in a way that raise my defenses and my frustrations, and then my hearing shuts down. It takes me too long to process through that. Some other people have the ability to just, say something, but it's in a way that I can hear it. And this is another reason. When I've been watching Calvin Becerra and several other people in Jeunesse for many years. I knew some of them. Some of them were good friends of mine. I would say good friends, people that I knew professionally, not good friends like, hey, let's go out for a drink. But there were reasons why I didn't pick them, because sometimes in my past experience, they were not as open or not as able to communicate with me in a way that would penetrate my dull brain, my rock head. Brad's laughing. I can see he's trying to control himself and not burst out in guffaws. But but you know what? Strong people need strong mentors.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. You get a bunch of alpha males in a room, and it's there's a lot of testosterone around, isn't there? We're not easy people to mentor because we've got our own mind, we've got our own beliefs, and one of the reasons we got to where we are is because we are really hard in our beliefs and in our self-confidence, almost to the point of being arrogant. My kids tell me, you are self-confident to the point of being arrogant. And you know what? You're right. And that's what keeps me moving forward, is because nobody can knock me off of my mission.
Yeah.
There's a value there. Go ahead, Brad.
I want to just talk about the shared values there real quick. And I'm not going to toot my own horn, but does the mentor have values that you hold similar? And that's why when in what I'm working on now, and I've been working on as far as branding and talking about, and I did a video last week, actually, I think I did 2 of them on my core values. And my core values, just to share what they are authenticity, integrity, and leadership. And the reason I did that is I want people to know where I'm coming from. I want to be transparent. I'm about being authentic, being real. I'm about integrity, doing the right thing and saying the right thing. And I'm about leadership, helping influence people. So if your mentor is transparent about their values, you're going to find out if there's the next one, compatibility, and then is their personality such that you can relate. They might be very abrasive and not somebody that you can really work with, but you want to find somebody that's compatible with you and that holds similar values to yours, so that you're getting advice from somebody you're kind of on par there relationally.
Absolutely. And so when we were having a conversation with Adam and Ashley back in the very end of November, first of December, basically, and we were having a conversation about something different, and it came up. My recollection was that I mentioned that I was really going to be making a transition to an international company. We had been kind of poking a stick at a domestic company and having some, understand. I didn't go there to build that company. I went there because there were some people there doing some things that I wanted to get around, that I wanted to see what they were doing. And part of that was Adam and Ashley, and then Jerry Adams Jr. also. And I wanted to see what they were doing. How are they doing this? And so Adam and Ashley mentioned that they were, making a transition also, and they were talking about I asked what you were there, right, Brad?
Yes,
I asked
I
them
was.
what company, and they said Jeunesse. I said, well, that's really good because that's the company that's kind of on the top of my list right now. And who are they working with? And they said Calvin Becerra. And I said, well, that's really good because he's right up one or two people on the top of my list also. And so I asked them if they could put a meeting together, and they said yes. And the next day we're talking to Calvin, right? We sat, wasn't it about a 90-minute meeting or something?
About a 90-minute meeting. It was just like, whoa, we went from like 0 to 80 miles an hour in 48 hours.
And I know that Calvin probably didn't realize it. Maybe he does. I've never really talked to him about it since then in this way. But I have my checklist. I have my mentor checklist here because I wasn't just going there only for Jeunesse. I wasn't just going there only for getting registered by somebody. I had this checklist of things and questions that I asked him, and I was watching his values. This is a great family guy. You remember what happened during that meeting? His wife kept kind of pinging him, "Come to dinner, honey." I didn't see the text, right? But I could say, "Are you coming to dinner?" And he's smiling. He says, "Yeah, she understands that we have to make these sacrifices." Well, this is a guy who's got a global business worth many, many, many millions and millions of dollars. He's spending time from his family with a couple of new guys that he doesn't even know. Yeah. Whatever we contribute to his income is infinitesimally small. And yet he's taken time. There was just many family, faith, value structures, mentoring ability, all of these things. The checklist just went bing, 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 bing. And at the end of that conversation, I said, "I'm in, let's go."
Yeah.
Because he hit all those checklists. But now, he had the communication style. Here's another thing. You got to choose a mentor of somebody, we talked about this just a minute, who's got your communication style, who has the ability to say things in a way that you can hear it. And part of this is their experience. And I told Calvin not too long ago, I said, "Look, I'm sorry. I know that I can be difficult to deal with, but I picked you because you're one of the few people that I can think of that's strong enough to be able to handle somebody like me in your group, because I'm a knucklehead. I'm pretty alpha guy, and I know that, but I need a mentor, not so much for what I'm doing today, but we need a mentor for where we're going to be probably a year to 2 years from now. We're really, really going to need to have somebody in place who knows what we do and what we've done."
Yeah.
Okay. So again, willingness to be available. You might look at somebody and go, "Man, this person would be the awesome mentor. This is going to be awesome if I could mentor with Bill Gates." Well, sorry, Bill Gates is just not going to be available to you and me.
Yeah.
There are people who might be awesome mentors. I would love to have Donald Trump be a mentor of mine because the guy has some amazing abilities. He's got some areas that maybe, aren't quite my cup of tea. That's personality differences, but he's not available to me. I can't say, "Hey, Don, let's get together for lunch," right? Exactly. It ain't gonna happen. Yeah. So do you have anything you'd add to these before we flip to the next screen? We're trying to.
No, I don't. Again, I want to self-promote, but communication skills are critical to leadership. Tune in Monday in my Monday morning leadership. I will be talking about communication.
There you go. A shameless plug. No worries. We love that. Okay. Let's promote the team, right?
That's good. Got it.
Brad has, for those who you don't know, Brad has a fantastic series that he's been running for several months now on leadership, and it's probably the best overall piece of work that I've seen on the subject matter that I've ever seen. And he's pulling subject matter from so many different resources, so many different areas, and pulling that into one place. And it literally, that's an MBA course in leadership as far as I'm concerned. So how do you start this relationship? You got to have an introduction, right? You're going to explain what your goals are, your time frames, your skill sets, your resources. What are your limitations? You're going to talk about a plan of action to reach your goals. You're going to identify some metrics with your mentor. How do you measure progress? Now, this doesn't have to happen in the introduction, but sometimes this introduction, this learning process, getting to know each other, can happen over a period, and probably should happen over a period of a couple of months. But the first thing is say, "I'm looking for a mentor. are you interested in having this conversation with me? And I have helped guide businesses through this process of finding mentors for the business owners, somebody who's out ahead. And sometimes you get 2 or 3 of them. But sometimes you go through these conversations for a few weeks and the person says, I don't think I'm the right person for you for this situation. That's okay. You've got to go through the process, okay?
Yeah.
So begin the relationship before you need a mentor. Now, yeah, you probably need a mentor now, and that's fine. That might be the case. But as you're lining out your goals, in our situation, we are going to need in sometime in the next couple of years on our team, we are going to need to have meetings in country all over the world. So why would I choose a mentor, even though he or she might be phenomenally successful? Why would I want to choose a mentor that just primarily had business in, let's say, China? That's only one country. But as we talked to Calvin, that was one of our questions. How many countries are you currently in? And he said, well, I personally flew to 40 countries last year. Okay. And I asked him some things specific to certain countries that I knew could be really challenging that we were already working or going to be working in. And right up and down the line, he had the right questions, or, he had the right answers to the questions. And it wasn't always that he knew what it was, but he said, look, just be honest. And he said, I'll just be honest with you. We're not really strong in that country yet, but when we get a person, Facebook doing what it is. So as you're developing mentors, you might need a mentor now, but one of the things that you're trying to do is to reach out there into the future and say, where am I going to be in a couple of years? Maybe I need to start building a relationship, because you allow your mentor time to get to know you and understand your process and progress.
Yeah.
So develop a line of communication. This is the next step, the final one in my discussion here. You need to talk to your mentor. What's the easiest way for them to communicate to you? Email, Zoom, Messenger, telephone? How do you communicate? How frequently do you communicate? Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly? I think at least monthly, you need to communicate something to your mentor. And preferably probably every couple of weeks, send them an email. Say, look, I'm going to just send you an email and an update every couple of weeks. You, as the mentee, you take the initiative. Push something to them. Go ahead.
Me and you communicate throughout the week pretty frequently. But I'm on a phone call with him every Sunday afternoon at 4:00 for about, 20 to 30 minutes. So once a week generally.
Right. So you've established some frequency of communication, and what information gets shared. You remember we had a counseling sheet. They called it a counseling sheet.
Gosh.
Back in the day, right?
Oh.
But it was super effective because they'd work this out through the entire organization of tens of thousands of people, that there was certain information that could be communicated so that really quickly that person could get a snapshot of what's going on in your business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So this is really the subject matter for today. I'm going to drop out of my screen share. I know Brad's got to take off because being the true leader he is, he's got a presentation in Kenya that he's got to jump over to.
Yep.
Anything we want to add to this as we get out of here, and then we'll clean this up.
Throw out a question for thought here is, why is mentorship so lacking out in our society? Again, I think it's almost non-existent in the business world, maybe at least where I was in, the industries I was in, the company I was with. But why is mentorship so lacking?
What do you think? What's your thought on that?
I don't think there's a lot of good servant leaders out there. I think the leadership is lacking, but servant leadership, because if you're going to be a real mentor, that mentor is going to be a servant leader. They have to be in that position. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. The guy that took time with you, Val, he was definitely a servant leader. He's smart enough to recognize investing his time and effort in Val would help him out, but he's a servant. So I think servant leadership has to be in place for mentorship to be effective. Otherwise, it's, you have to be willing to serve people to be an effective mentor.
I think that's definitely a big part of it, is that people aren't generally taught how to be a mentor either.
Yeah.
But my personal feed on this is that the process of mentorship is a process of submission.
Yes, very much so.
Mentorship starts on the mentee, with the mentee, the person being mentored.
Yeah.
And the thing that I see here is most people coming through school, we aren't taught what we just taught today. How do you choose a mentor? There's a reason why I started the conversation from that side. You, as the person who desires to be mentored, need to be able to reach out to people to establish that network of mentorship. And
yes.
I think that's, in my opinion, I'm not negating what you're saying because I think it's true, but I think, in my opinion, I think there are people out there who would be willing to be mentored if they were contacted, but nobody's contacting them. This is not something we're taught, that you should value this. You should go have mentors in different areas of your life, and this is how you should do that.
Yep.
So, Brad, you got to take off.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Hope you got some benefit out of this. Thanks, Val. That's a great topic. Maybe we can cover it again. But mentorship, what's a mentor? How do you find a mentor? Why is it lacking? Guys, think about that. And thanks for tuning in today.
You go, and I'll clean this up and post it on a video because we obviously had Facebook difficulties today. Okay, see you later. Thanks, everybody.